Quick question. If one bullet had been 1 centimeter to the left, your world would look different today. Have you thought about that? Same building. 2 assassination attempts, 45 years apart. Trump spoke to the press that same night and said, "Look at the names. It's always the influential ones." He's right, just not in the way he thinks. Because this isn't about influence, and it isn't about politics. It's about math. Math that was written down in 1944, and that 3 presidents never read. Here's the question nobody asks after every assassination attempt. Not who did it, not why. Why does the best security in the world, with a $1 billion budget, keep losing? Butler, Pennsylvania, July 2024. Thomas Crooks, 20 years old, a backpack, spent hours walking around the perimeter. Security saw him, got signals. Crooks climbed onto a roof 130 meters away and fired 8 shots. The bullet grazed an ear 1 centimeter to the right. That wasn't incompetence. That was math. 2 players, security and attacker. Security checks point A or doesn't. Attacker hits point A or doesn't. If security always checks the same spot, the attacker picks a different one. If the attacker always hits the same spot, security catches him. So both randomize. That's Nash equilibrium. Security is mathematically required to leave blind spots. Always. No matter the budget. Reassuring. Remember that. It explains everything that comes next. Now let's run history through that matrix, starting with a detail that doesn't usually make it into textbooks. Lincoln, April 14, 1865. John Parker, police officer, the only guard assigned to the presidential box that night. Before the job, 14 disciplinary violations. Drunk on duty, visiting brothels on the clock, once found asleep on a streetcar instead of patrolling. His explanation to the board: he heard ducks quacking on the tram and climbed on to investigate. A man whose alibi was ducks was assigned to protect the President of the United States. Standard hiring procedure. During intermission, Parker walked to the Star Saloon across the street. At the bar sat John Wilkes Booth, working up the nerve, the bodyguard and the assassin. 1 bar. 1 moment. Neither knew who was sitting next to them. When Booth walked into the unlocked presidential box, Parker's chair outside the door was empty. Parker wasn't fired, wasn't punished. He went on to guard Lincoln's widow for 3 more years. They finally let him go in 1868 for falling asleep on duty again. After Lincoln, Garfield, 16 years later. McKinley, 20 years after that. 3 presidents in 36 years. Every successful attempt changes 1 number in the next potential attacker's head, the estimated probability of success. In game theory, this is called an information cascade. People don't get angrier. They update the math. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. The route of the presidential motorcade through Dealey Plaza was published in the Dallas Morning News the day before. Oswald read the same paper as everyone else. Agent at the morning briefing. On November 22nd, route is finalized. We're releasing it to the press. Is that standard procedure? We always do it this way. Security knew the route. Oswald knew the route. Security knew nothing about Oswald. Oswald knew everything about himself. Asymmetric information. 1 player sees the whole board. The other plays blind. Now a detail most people don't know. The night before the assassination, 9 Secret Service agents spent the night at a bar called The Cellar in Fort Worth. Some got back to the hotel at 5 in the morning. By 8, they were supposed to be on duty. Lincoln, 1 guard left to drink. Kennedy, 9 guards drinking all night. Progress. You already see the pattern. Before I name it. Trump, 2024-2026. We covered Butler. But here's what matters more. Ryan Ruth, the second attempt, September 2024, left notes. He wrote it directly. Butler inspired him. Not politics, not ideology, just the fact that it was possible. Cole Allen. Last night, Washington Hilton called himself a federal assassin in his writings. Took a train from California. Planned it in advance. Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, Butler, Routh, Allen. Same mechanism, 160 years apart. But here's where the matrix completely breaks down. Everything we've covered so far, Rational players, people with goals you can model. March 1981. John Hinckley writes a letter to actress Jodie Foster a few hours before walking to the Washington Hilton. I would abandon the idea of getting Reagan in a second if I could only win your heart. The President of the United States almost died because an actress didn't write back. What does game theory do when an irrational player enters the matrix? It stops working, and no security budget fixes that. I've been looking at this math for a long time, and here's what I can't get past. In every single one of these cases, the signals were there. Security saw them. The system had the information, and it still didn't work. That's not incompetence. It's something more fundamental. The only way to understand it is to remove one player from the matrix and watch what happens to the board. I'm going to show you two scenarios. Both have real consequences. Think about which one would have changed your life more. We'll come back to that at the end. Kennedy survives. A few months before Dallas, Kennedy signed Directive NSM 263, withdrawing the first 1,000 American advisors from Vietnam. Johnson reversed it 4 days after taking office. 58,000 American soldiers died in Vietnam. One player removed from the matrix on a Friday afternoon. The board shifts for decades. Trump doesn't survive Butler. 1 centimeter to the left. The November 2024 election. Different candidates. Possibly a different outcome. Ukraine. NATO. The Iran negotiations happening right now. Tariffs reshaping global trade. Every single one of those tracks runs through one specific player with one specific position. Remove the player. And allies, adversaries, neutral parties all recalculate their strategies at the same time. That's not a political argument. That's just how the matrix works. Back to the question we started with. Why does this keep happening? Security is solving the wrong problem. More agents changes the parameters of the matrix, but the information cascade lives somewhere else, inside the next attacker's head, in their estimate of whether it's worth trying. As long as that estimate is high, the equilibrium doesn't change. The math from 1944 predicted this. Now, the question I asked you to hold on to, Kennedy or Butler? Which one would have changed your life more? Put it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And here's the question the math can't answer. If an irrational player breaks any security matrix, what can actually be changed? The Washington Hilton is still standing. Probably just a building. Probably. Next video. A man who figured out you don't have to change your strategy. You change the rules. The US government spent 10 years trying to stop him. Didn't work. John Rockefeller. Game theory. Monopoly. See you then.